In this week's parasha, Parashat Shelach, we have the sin of the spies, the Heta Meraglim. The spies go to the land of Israel. They're supposed to come back with a beautiful report of how great it is in the land, and ultimately the exact opposite comes back. While they do say the land was great, they said it's too dangerous, the non-Jews are going to destroy us, we can't make it, it's not going to be, and they speak Lashon Hara against the land of Israel. We're not going to make it here, it's better for us to go back to the land of Egypt. It's not going to be. And of course, this sin is just like, it's too great. And Kadosh Baruch Hu says, this generation is not going to make it to the land of Israel. They're going to have to die in the desert. If they don't want to go, they don't have to go. They'll die in the desert, the Midbar. They're not going to the land of Israel. And that's the 40 years of wandering in the desert until that generation dies and the next generation goes in. Now, the parsha continues and says, but you know what? The kids are going to make it to the land of Israel, and there's going to be special mitzvahs for the land of Israel. They're going to take the first of the bread, the challah, the truma of the lechem. We're going to bring challah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's another story along the way about the Mekoshesh Eitzim, which is another unbelievable story. But then it closes off. We get to the very end of the parasha, and we have the third paragraph we say in the Shema every single day, the paragraph of the Tzitzit. And Hashem tells us, you're going to put on the Tzitzit, you're going to have these strings on the kanaf, on the corners of our garments, and when we're going to look at the tzitzit or item oto, and you're going to remember all the mitzvot, velo tatu aharei levachem v'aharei nechem, and we're not going to stray after our hearts, after our eyes, asher atem zonim aharehem, that we stray after those things, and eventually remember that, you're going to remember all the mitzvot, because I am Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim. So I heard a shur a couple years ago from Rabbi Khan, and I saw recently a Dvar Torah by Rabbanit Shani Tarragon. She was speaking about the beauty of the Israeli flag, which we'll get to in a second, where she actually relates the end of the parasha, the mitzvah of the tzitzit, of the white strings with the Tekhelet string, to the beginning of the parasha and the sin of the spies, because they share very similar language. And I know Rabbi Khan also spoke about this many, many times, but if you look at the psukim, it doesn't say, we call them the meraglim, the spies, but nowhere does HaKadosh Baruch Hu ever tell them to go and be meragel, go and leragel et haaretz. Hashem doesn't tell them that. Rather, Hashem says, go, shlach lecha anashim, vayatur et haaretz. They should go and they should go see what the land is all about. It's the same language that we find by tzitzit. Velo taturu aharei v'acharei nechem. This language of latur. And Rabbanit Tarragon goes on and says that there's actually more examples of this throughout the language. We're talking about the eyes over here. Well, you know what? The pasuk earlier on with the spy says, "Vayishlach ota Moshe latur et Eretz Canaan." He sent them latur et Eretz Canaan, and or item et haaretz malhi, and go and see what this land is all about. Or item, but you know what? They messed up with their eyes. They saw it was beautiful, but they came back and they strayed with their eyes. They were zanu acharei enehem. And where do we find this language of zanu, that they were straying? So when Hashem punishes that generation and says, your children are going to be wandering around the desert, and what are your children going to do? They're going to have to bear the consequences of your straying, of your znutechem. So the idea is that the tzitzit, when we look at the tzitzit, it's supposed to remind ourselves of these ideas of the sins of the spy and say, no, it's not going to be that way. The tzitzit is going to become the symbol to remind us that we are supposed to go to the land of Israel. Don't go back to the land of Egypt. And it says, Rabbi Tarragon, that, when Caleb and Yoshua heard about this Lashon Hara, they were the two good spies, so they ripped their clothing. So we talk about the kanaf of the tzitzit, the kanfei tzitzit, the corners of the tzitzit, the beged that we have, is supposed to remind ourselves of the beged of Caleb and Yoshua. But now we're going to wear our beged proudly, and we're going to have the strings that are going to remind ourselves that no, we're going to make it to this land. It's going to be Hashem. We're going to remember all the mitzvot. We're going to remember Hashem. We're going to remember that Hashem is the one that took us out from Mitzrayim as we close off with the Shema. And when we look at it, remember that's going to be our protection, so we're not going to mess up. It's also the idea of kanaf. We have the four corners of the tzitzit, this language of the corners. What did the spies do? They were checking out all the corners of the land of Israel. So you have this deeper connection between the tzitzit reminding us God took us out of Egypt. We're not supposed to go back. We have a mission. We have a place that we're supposed to be going to. We're going to have to metaken that sin of the meraglim. Now, she then relates beautifully, and she relates it to the actual Israeli flag. What's the Israeli flag? We have the Magen David in the middle, then we have the two blue stripes of Tekhelet, so to speak, on the white background. So it was actually created, the initial creators of the flag, going back to the earlier Zionist congresses already. She quotes that it took place in the early parts of the state, but really, it already goes back to the earlier Zionist congresses, even before Israel. They chose that as the symbol because of the white and blue of the talit, so that the flag itself is supposed to remind ourselves of the talit, of the tzitzit. So now the connection is beautiful from our parsha, because the idea of the tzitzit is to remember to never leave the land of Israel. Don't leave Israel. This is your homeland. This is where you're supposed to be. I am God who took you out of Egypt to take you to this beautiful, beautiful land over here. Don't mess up like the spies. So in Israel, we have this flag. So when we look everywhere, when we're coming in, when we're leaving, we look at that flag, we remember, don't be zonim after the things that we shouldn't be going afterwards. And this should be our protection to realize how beautiful and how great our land is and how awesome Eretz Yisrael is. Now, if we're already talking about the symbolic idea of the modern day flag, of the Tekhelet stripes, that's taking us back to the Tzitzit, to the symbolic power, if you look at the Tzitzit, to protect ourselves, and you can try to relate that to modern times. So actually, this past Pesach and Chol Hamoed, I went with a trip with my family to the Bible Lands Museum in Yerushalayim. It's actually really fun for families on Pesach. They do great shows wearing costumes of like paro and stuff. And while I was there, I bought a book at the gift shop. They used to have a Tekhelet exhibit in the museum. So they had a whole book all about Tekhelet, and there was one article in there by this Professor Moshe Idel. He's a professor of Kabbalah. He's an academic guy, but he studies Kabbalah things, and this whole thing's about Tekhelet. So he actually had a cool thing speaking about the mystical powers. In the past, we spoke about a different article about the mystical koach of Tekhelet against the Ayin Hara and why it's all over Tzfat. But he writes a little different. He actually quotes a source. There's a source of how to make Kabbalistic jewelry to protect yourself on the journey. And there was a rabbi named Rabbi Yoel Baal Hashem. It was in the early 18th century, and he was writing how to create a Kabbalistic type of jewelry to protect yourselves against listim, against robbers along the road. And he says, make this ring, and he says, on the ring, put a Magen David and some Tekhelet stone. And he has all the other mystical ideas about saying different names of angels at certain times of the day, and what to say when the robber attacks you, and all these things. But just the base of it is you have yourself a Magen David, and you have yourself Tekhelet, the blue, and it served as a protection from dangers out there. Just another symbolic idea of the colors, the blue, the white, the tzitzit that we're wearing, the flag we have in Israel. All these things date back to much earlier Masorets, much earlier traditional things that we have of koach in these colors that B'ezrat Hashem can protect us from everything along the way. Shabbat Shalom.